You know that feeling, right? You've got access to these incredible models, Gemini 1.5 Pro, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, all the high-powered stuff.
You've got the engine of a Ferrari.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you open your favorite IDE or that new chat interface you grabbed off GitHub, and it only speaks OpenAI.
It's the classic interoperability nightmare.
Yeah.
You have all this horsepower, but
Yeah.
the dashboard is from like a 1990s sedan.
100%. You're trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
Or even worse, you're deep in the flow coding, and then boom, rate limit exceeded.
Oh, that's the worst.
And you're just locked out
Yeah.
for an hour because you sent 3 requests a bit too fast.
Yeah.
It is maddening.
It's a friction that I think almost every developer is feeling right now. The tools are all hard-coded for one specific standard, but all the innovation is happening everywhere else.
Which is, I mean, that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive into Antigravity Tools,
Yeah.
specifically the Antigravity-Manager.
Right. And we should be really clear here. This isn't just another all-in-one chat app. This is a desktop application built with Tauri v2 and Rust that just, it sits quietly in your system tray.
And based on the documentation, and especially the change logs we've seen leading up to version 4.0.8, calling it a chat app just completely misses the point.
Completely. I mean, if you're thinking of this as a chat app or even a password manager, you're really underestimating it. The best way to think of it is a local AI transit station.
A transit station, I like that.
Yeah, its whole mission is just to break down the walls between different APIs, manage your usage quota so you don't get banned, and translate the protocols on the fly. It's pure middleware.
Okay, so let's dig into that, because the first big problem it tackles is what you just mentioned, that protocol gap. The fact that half the dev tools out there just expect an OpenAI endpoint.
And that's the core problem, right? You have this huge ecosystem, VS Code extensions, things like Cherry Studio, the Claude Code, CLI. They are all hard-coded to send requests to an OpenAI-style address.
And if you try to point that at Google's Gemini API,
It just fails. Google's servers, they don't speak that dialect.
so anti-gravity just, what, it sits in the middle?
Exactly. It spins up a local server, usually at that, V1 chat completions endpoint that everyone expects.
So it mimics OpenAI perfectly.
Perfectly. Your IDE sends a request to your local machine thinking it's talking to GPT-4. Antigravity catches it, translates it instantly into Google's own protocol, sends it to Google, gets the answer, translates it back.
And hands it back to your editor.
Hmm.
It's the universal adapter.
It really is.
But looking at the logs, specifically around the auto-stream conversion, there's something more going on here than just translation. This feels like it's actively gaming the system.
It is, yeah. And for a very good reason. Google's API is incredibly strict with its quotas if you make non-streaming requests.
Right, where you ask a question and just wait for the whole answer at once.
Yeah, which is what a lot of older tools do. And if you do that too often, you get hit with a 429 error, too many requests, even if you're way under your token budget.
Because it creates a concurrency spike on their servers.
Exactly. But if you use streaming requests, where the answer trickles in word by word, the limits are much, much looser.
So wait, let me get this straight. Antigravity is basically lying to Google.
I mean, lying is a strong word.
My tool sends a non-streaming request. Antigravity intercepts it, converts it into a streaming request just to dodge the quota police. Then it collects all the little pieces of the answer, stitches them back into one JSON object, and hands it back to my tool as if nothing ever happened.
That is precisely what it does. It's an arbitration layer. It just buffers the chaos so your editor sees a clean, compliant response while the backend is, let's say, doing some ninja moves to keep the connection alive.
That is some aggressive engineering. I respect it. But okay, once you've got the connection sorted, you hit the second problem. Cost and limits.
Right.
If I'm just running a quick regex check, I don't want to burn one of my limited ultra queries on Gemini 1.5 Pro.
And you shouldn't have to. And this is where the manager part of Antigravity-Manager really earns its name. It has this model router that's surprisingly granular.
How specific are we talking? Is it just basic load balancing?
Oh, much, much deeper. You can set up what they call expert redirects using regular expressions.
Really?
Yeah, you can literally tell a system if a request comes in for GPT-4, but the prompt contains this specific keyword, don't send it to GPT-4, route it to Gemini 3 Pro High instead.
So I can use a tool that only lets me pick GPT-4 from its dropdown, but I'm secretly powering it with whatever model I want on the back end.
Correct. And it automates the whole hierarchy, too. It uses this tiered routing system. So imagine you have 3 Google accounts hooked up. 1 paid Ultra, 1 Pro, and 1 free.
And logic says I'd want to save the ultra for the hard stuff.
Right.
And use the free tier for just, volume.
Well, the default actually prioritizes the high-speed fast reset quotas first, just to make sure performance is good, but it's totally configurable. The real key, though, is the health score.
A health score.
Yeah, it gives each account a score from 0 to 1.
Like a credit score for my API keys.
In a way, yeah. If an account starts throwing errors, rate limits, server crashes, whatever, its health score drops instantly. And the router sees that and just diverts traffic to the next healthiest account in line.
That's resilience.
Yeah.
But what happens when the API isn't down but just busy? You know how Google has those little micro outages all the time?
They thought of that. They implemented a micro throttle. So instead of just failing the request right away, Antigravity will just pause it for a few milliseconds and check again to see if an account has freed up.
So it's the difference between your app crashing and just stuttering for a split second.
Exactly.
I saw in the v4.0.7 notes they added an adaptive circuit breaker. Now that's a term I usually hear in high-scale microservices. Why do you need that in a desktop app?
Because modern AI accounts are multimodal. So before this change, if you hit a rate limit generating images with Gemini, for instance,
The whole account would get locked.
the whole account would get locked, which is total overkill.
Yeah.
Just because I can't make a picture doesn't mean I can't send text, So the adaptive circuit breaker isolates that failure. If Gemini image fails, it only trips the breaker for the image model. Your text chats just keep flowing through that same account, and it uses a dynamic backoff, fails once, waits 60 seconds, fails again, 300 seconds. It learns the outage pattern so it doesn't keep banging its head against the wall.
That is seriously sophisticated. But let's ramp up the complexity. We're not just sending simple text prompts anymore. We're seeing this massive rise of thinking models, Gemini 3, Claude 4.5, models that don't just answer, they show their work.
And that showing their work creates a huge engineering headache for a tool like this. These models output these thinking blocks, their internal monologue, separate from the final answer.
And you have to send that history back to keep the conversation going. Context is king.
But here's the catch. To stop people from, faking the model's thoughts, the providers sign those thinking blocks with a cryptographic signature. If you send the thought back without the matching signature, or if it's corrupted,
The whole conversation gets rejected.
the whole thing, it's a chain of custody.
But wait a minute. Antigravity has a feature called dynamic thinking stripping, or context purification. And if I'm reading this right, it deliberately strips out the old thinking blocks to save token space.
That's right, it does.
But hang on, if you strip out that internal monologue, aren't you breaking the chain? How does the model verify the history if you've deleted the proof?
That is the massive risk. And usually, yes, the API would reject you for tampering with the history. And that's why Antigravity has to cache the cryptographic signature, that digital wax seal, separately.
So it keeps the seal, but gets rid of the text. It's basically tricking the API into thinking the text is still there.
Essentially, yeah. It caches these signatures in 3 different layers, by tool, by family, and by session. But sometimes even that fails. The signature expires or the cache gets cleared.
And then the conversation just crashes.
It would. But they built in what they call protocol repair. If a signature error happens because of the stripping, the system injects a system recovery prompt.
What does that mean?
It basically just tells the model, hey, the previous thought record was corrupted. Please regenerate your response based only on the user and assistant text history.
That's like diplomatic immunity for API errors. I lost the paperwork. Just trust me.
It's a really clever workaround.
Yeah.
It bridges the gap between the API's strict security and the messy reality of long conversations where you just can't afford to keep megabytes of thinking text in your context window.
Speaking of messy long conversations,
Yeah.
this brings us to the feature that I think most of our listeners, the learners, the researchers are going to care about, the token saver.
Oh, yeah.
We've all hit that wall. You're deep in a coding session and then context limit reached.
And the conversation is just dead. You have to start all over. It's the worst.
Exactly. And most tools just chop off the beginning of the chat. But Antigravity seems to have a more surgical approach, this 3-layer progressive context compression.
Yeah, this came in around version 3.3.47, and it works like a pressure valve. So layer 1 kicks in when your context window hits about 60% pressure. They call it tool pruning.
What gets pruned?
It looks through the history and finds tool calls that have already been resolved. So, say, 10 minutes ago you asked the AI to search for some Python library docs. it got the answer. You don't need the log of the search anymore, right?
You just need the answer.
Exactly. So it just snips out those intermediate search steps. It has zero impact on the conversation's logic, but it frees up space.
That's smart. It's like throwing out the receipts after you've balanced your checkbook.
Precisely. Then layer 2 kicks in at 75% pressure, thinking compression. And this is what we were just talking about. It replaces the huge text content of those thinking blocks with just less, but it keeps the digital signature.
So the API still sees the wax seal and knows the thought happened, but it doesn't charge you for all those tokens.
Correct. But then, if you somehow hit 90% pressure, layer 3 kicks in, the FERC plus XML summary.
Okay, it sounds drastic.
It is. It takes the entire conversation, sends it off to a cheaper, faster model like Flashlight, and tells it to summarize everything into a structured XML format.
An XML format.
Yeah, like Section 1, tech stack used, Section 2, current plan, Section 3, debugging history.
Wow. So it's like saving your game before a boss fight. It wipes the slate clean, starts a totally fresh session, but it injects that XML summary right at the top.
That's it exactly. So the model thinks it's a new chat, but it has this perfectly structured memory of everything you just did, and you instantly reclaim 90% of your context window.
And I'm guessing it has to be pretty smart about when to trigger this, because token counting is so tricky, especially across different languages.
That's a subtle but really cool detail. It uses a dynamic calibration tool. It's actually learned that English is about 4 characters per token, but CJK languages, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, are closer to 1.5.
No way.
Yep. So it adjusts its math on the fly based on the language you're using to predict the limit much more accurately.
That level of detail is just wild. Okay, let's shift gears to visuals. We're not just talking text anymore. Antigravity supports image in 3, and I see notes in here about handling 100 MotoP payloads.
Yeah, this is another one of those translation feats. Standard OpenAI tools, they ask for image sizes like 100 by 100 or a quality setting of HD. Google's Imagen 3 doesn't use those exact parameters.
So anti-gravity just maps them automatically.
It does. But that 100 millibeat support is the key for analysis. If you're trying to upload, say, a huge architectural blueprint or a high-res medical scan for the AI to look at.
Most middleware would just choke on that file size.
Right. Antigravity is built to pipe that straight through. It also handles something called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. This is huge for developers building agents.
How so?
Well, Google's API can be a bit finicky. It doesn't like certain constraints in JSON schemas, like min length or pattern.
So if I tell the AI the password you generate must be 8 characters long using a code constraint, Google might just reject it.
It might. So Antigravity actually cleans up the schema before sending it. It moves those constraints out of the code field and into the description field.
So it turns a hard rule into a constraint hint.
Yeah, it basically writes a little sticky note for the AI that says, by the way, keep this under 8 characters. It's constantly negotiating on your behalf.
I want to touch on deployment, because we said this is a desktop app, but version 4.0 brought native headless. For all the self-hosters listening, why is this a big deal? Because before you had to use VNC, right?
Yeah, and if you've ever tried to run a GUI app on a server with VNC, you know it's just a nightmare. You're basically streaming a video of a virtual desktop to your browser just to click a button.
It's so heavy on resources.
Completely. Native headless means they just stripped out that GUI requirement. You can spin up the Antigravity Docker container on your home NAS or a cloud server, and it serves a lightweight web UI directly. It behaves like a proper microservice.
So I can have my own personal AI gateway running 204/7 on my home server, and then just access it from my phone, my laptop, wherever.
That's the idea. And with the latest updates up to 4.0.8 planned for January 2026, they've added full-link debug logs.
And full link means fully transparent.
Total transparency. You can see absolutely everything. The raw request, your tool set, exactly how Antigravity translated it, the request it sent to Google, and the raw response Google sent back.
That is crucial. If I'm trusting this thing to be my translator, I need to know if it made a mistake or if Google messed up.
It takes away the black box. They also fixed some specific regional things, like adding Arabic support with proper right-to-left layout adaptation, and a really clever fix for flashlight capacity exhaustion.
I saw that. Flashlight's super popular because it's cheap or free, so it gets hammered all the time.
Right. And previously, if flashlight was overloaded, your request would just fail. Now, Antigravity detects that specific error and automatically reroutes the traffic to the standard flash model.
It might cost a tiny bit more, but your service stays up.
Exactly. It just keeps working without you having to lift a finger.
So, okay, We've covered the protocol translation, the intelligent routing, context compression, server deployment. It's a lot.
It is a lot of moving parts.
But if we sort of step back for a second, Antigravity Tools isn't just a manager. It feels like it represents a bigger shift in philosophy.
Oh, how so?
Well, we spend all this time debating which AI model is the best. Is it Gemini? Is it Claude? Is it GPT? But as we see tools like this, they can effectively hack the protocols to make them all interchangeable.
Slicing them up, summarizing them locally.
Yeah. It feels like the power dynamic is shifting. We used to think all the intelligence was in the cloud. But if a tool in my machine can chop up my conversation, remix it, switch models midstream to save me money, and even repair broken API signatures on its own,
Go on.
maybe the cloud providers, they're just becoming utility companies. You know, they sell the electricity, but we are the ones building the really smart appliances.
That is the billion-dollar realization, isn't it? If the middleware becomes smart enough, the big AI models just become commodities. They're just raw horsepower. The application of that intelligence, the strategy of how it's used, that now lives on your local machine.
And that is a fascinating place to be. It puts all the control back in the user's hands.
It does, and it demands a bit more from us as users to actually understand how that machinery works under the hood.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, next time you fire up your coding assistant or your chat bot, just think about all the invisible layers that are making that conversation possible. There is a whole lot of complexity hidden behind that little blinking cursor.
Indeed there is.
That's it for this deep dive into anti-gravity tools. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.